What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Nvidia stock, ticker symbol NVDA, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Friday, February 23rd. Well, you guys, Nvidia today, a record breaker, up 110 points a share, 16.4% after, of course, last night's eye-popping earnings, but not only earnings, eye-popping guidance. Quarter after quarter, Nvidia continues to impress. Now, we covered this one last night. I'm covering Nvidia every single day, so please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. But we were talking last night about how the move in after hours always has to prove itself during regular trading hours when the real volume kicks in. Now, we got good volume after hours last night. Of course, the earnings catalyst prompted that pretty comparable volume to what we saw heading into the close. Okay, but that of course fades very quickly as the move holds late into after hours, and then in pre-market there's very little volume. So I always like to see, okay, well, what's the overall market going to think of this move come the open? And listen, I mean, the market loved it. Now let's take a look at this one, but first of all, I would like to mention that I saw a lot. I mean, you guys know I've tracked unusual options activity every day the market's been open, literally for 4 to 5 years now straight. I've tracked it every single day. Nvidia, I was seeing an absurd amount of unusual options orders, overwhelmingly to the call side today. I did alert one of those. If you guys want to get those unusual options activity alerts, it's the first link in the pinned comment. But I've tracked these for long before I ever offered it as a product or service. Okay. And it was highly interesting, the amount of $500,000 to like $1.5 million orders. It was endless. Now, a lot were puts, and those were hedges. At least I would expect, or of course shorter term bets on a reversion down toward the short term mean. But what was really interesting was that the overwhelming majority of these orders were bullish orders. I thought that was worth mentioning. I thought that was highly interesting. So let's take a look here. Let's actually start on the 5-minute chart here. And what I want to do is I want to just look at volume, and we have to kind of consider yesterday as well, which we don't commonly have to do. And you can see here that we got big volume off the open, okay? And that was the biggest volume we saw all day. And I just wanted to compare it to yesterday. And now what we can do is zoom in so we can really get contextual here. The biggest move of the day was, of course, this opening drive on Nvidia. I'm curious, did any of you trade Nvidia today? Because it was relatively in play. I know that some of you caught some trades. Let me know what you caught in the comment section. But anyway, that opening drive there, that was obviously the bigger move of the day. And look at this volume, guys. Huge volume off the open, not unexpected on a day like today. So we have to take that contextually. But what I'm thinking is really interesting is we saw volume hold, and then it immediately starts to fade as soon as that bigger move is over and things start to go sideways. You know what that tells me? That tells me that the big market sample size, the biggest sample size we got today, overwhelmingly so agreed with the upside move. Listen, this is one factor of many. I'm never ever trading off of, one time frame, one factor alone. I mean, listen, even when I'm just scalping using the 1-minute chart, I'm using the chart itself. I'm using multiple scanners. I'm using the level 2 is mostly what I watch. Once I'm in a trade, I kind of ignore the chart, to be honest with you. And the tape, time and sales. I mean, that's 4 factors right there for a scalp that might take 15 seconds. But in order to get that bigger picture, when we're looking at these kind of things, we need to look at each factor individually, and then we can come to whatever conclusion we decide to come to on our own. Okay, so let's move on now and start looking at levels to watch on like a day-to-day basis as we head into tomorrow, Friday. So last night and today's big move is starting to suck up that quickest moving average, which is, of course, going to be that 50-period moving average, that white line on the 30-minute, at least when we're comparing the 50 and 200 on the 30-minute, 4-hour, and daily. But with a move of that size, these things take time, and they take longer time the longer time frame you go. So when we see a big move like this, from a day-to-day perspective, if I'm a bull and the move is upside, What I want to see is I want to see that 50 period on the 30-minute chart rip up with the stock as quickly as possible and get some feet up underneath the move, at least a psychological barrier. Okay, more than just a price level, although price levels are incredibly important. We'll get there on the daily chart. So I'm looking at that white line, that 50 period, and just saying, I want to see this thing move upside as quickly as possible tomorrow to put a psychological barrier up underneath the move. Okay, that's really all I'm watching here on the 30-minute tomorrow. If we see a downside test of the 30-minute as it continues higher and meets with the stock, if we end up seeing that happening, obviously if I'm a bull, I want to see that hold. Bears, you're going to want to see that break to the downside. 4-hour chart here. You can see this is going to take its time. Any technicals are going to take their time here, especially moving averages, to catch up with the name, right? These are lagging indicators. All they are self-fulfilling prophecies. They're psychology, nothing more, nothing less. So same deal here on the 4-hour, but really I'm just looking to see if we can get this thing moving upside as quickly as we possibly can, but understanding that that's going to take time. So the 4-hour, I'm still paying attention, but it is, to be honest with you guys, slightly less relevant, at least in the immediate future. Now the daily, this is, in my opinion, the biggest chart of all. Okay, every fund, institution, retail investor probably had this chart pulled up on their screen at one point or another today. And it probably looked incredibly similar to how mine looks. You have the daily chart with the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. You have volume, and maybe you're looking at implied volatility, which is the bottom blue line. Now listen, when you're looking at a chart that's this popular, do not overcomplicate what's obvious. And looking at this chart, what's the obvious story that everyone and their mother can look at and say, yeah, that's probably what I'd be looking at on this stock, even if they don't know stocks. To me, right? And if we zoom out, it gets even easier to kind of tell. To me, it's $800 a share. I mean, that not only we cracked a new all-time high today, not only would 800 be another new all-time high, but in addition, it is a massive psychological level. I mean, we saw a similar thing with 700 back here. It took us 4 days of trying to pop above. Okay. I don't expect 800 to be a lot different, although, you know, it's unlikely we see similar movement around that we saw 7. I expect a similar strength of potential resistance, okay? But what you have to understand is that contextually speaking, you could have 10 times the buying pressure and rip through it like nothing, whereas previously it took 4 days, it could take nothing moving forward. Or, since we are so extended now, I mean, if you look on the daily chart, Nvidia is extended. I think deservingly so with the earnings reports that they've posted, but there is not a doubt about it. There's a lot of bears and bulls, you know, understand the bearish side, arguably more so than your own side. The bears are looking at this chart right now saying, well, it can't possibly go any higher. But that's the old saying, right? The market, or any one particular stock, can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. Okay, and it's absolutely true. $800 a share is the obvious level to watch. I don't care what side you're on. I don't care if you're long 100,000 shares or you own one call option. I don't care if you're short one share or if you own 10,000 puts. 800 is what everyone's watching. Okay, to the downside, it's 750. To the upside, it's 8. Bulls, you're going to want to see a claim of, I know we're asking a lot here, but you're going to want to see a claim of 800 as soon as we possibly can here. That would be a beautiful thing to see. And bears, 700 was a huge level heading into earnings. I mean, we gave it up into earnings and we reclaimed it like nothing after the report. A downside break of 750 is a good start if you're a bear, but ultimately a downside break of 7 would be, I think, a lot of bears' goals. However, I wouldn't be surprised if some bears were a little discouraged after that earnings report, especially the guidance. But they still have the fact that the stock is undoubtedly extended upside, at least traditionally speaking, in their back pocket to use as maybe an emotional crutch. Okay, last thing here. What was the bias in the chain today on Nvidia? Look at this, about 2.5 million total contracts. That's a huge volume for Nvidia, massive. 1.52 million calls, 970,000 puts, big call bias on Nvidia today. However, the short-term speculators, the 0 to 20 delta range, right? What are those short-term bets that are being placed? Those are the far out of the money contracts, on average much shorter dated than the at the money and deeper in the money contracts. 489,000 calls, 647,000 puts. So in the short term, we're actually put heavy in terms of bias. But then you look at every other delta range, so you start getting closer to at the money and then in the money, more midterm, right? And then longer term. And those lean pretty overwhelmingly so to the bullish side, as well as that overall ratio. Okay. Listen, I'm covering Nvidia stock every single day. It gets 5 videos a week in preparation of the next trading day. So please subscribe to the channel if you got value. I greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.